Welcome to Mark My Words, a show that searches for the fork in the road in life, the place where the turning point in the journey of entrepreneurship and life can be found. Let's meet each other at the crossroads on Mark My Words. This episode is sponsored by GrowX Labs. Let's be real, leading a business is lonely. When the big decisions land on your desk, who do you actually talk to? That's where GrowX Labs comes in. Their executive decision support gives founders and execs direct access to a strategic sounding board. Someone who's been in the trenches and knows how to cut through the noise. Whether it's team tension, high-stakes moves, or just needing to talk it out, GrowX helps you move forward with clarity and confidence. Head to growxlabs.com/Mark. That's GRWX labs.com/Mark and book your discovery call. There's a lot of things that intrigue me about my guest Rachel Allen today. She has a really interesting story about how she got into entrepreneurship as a copywriter, and I can't wait for her to actually tell the story to all of us. But one thing that I can't help but to be fascinated by, and I've heard a lot of very unique headlines and phrases and all kinds of stuff since I've started doing this show, but I can't say that I've ever seen anybody kind of like define themselves as a deeply nerdy marketer. And anybody, like right away, a couple of things come to mind when I hear deeply nerdy. I've never heard that. And Rachel uses this in a few different places. So I'm really excited to learn all about what makes her deeply nerdy as a marketer. She is also, she helps people to make words make money. She's fast thinking. She's deeply nerdy as a marketer. She has a broad-ranging experience for for-profit and non-profit sectors. And this is what happens when you're trying to read stuff and be creative. You get all tongue-tied. But Rachel Allen is not only, if I can go back and find, I have a lot of stuff going on today. She is the owner of Bolt from the Blue Copywriting, which is also something I'm very curious to know what Bolt from the Blue actually means. Rachel is really good with words, if you haven't already picked up on that. And she also calls herself a brand smith at Triple Diamond. Rachel, welcome to Mark My Words. How you doing today?
Oh, thank you so much for that lovely intro, and thank you for having me. I am doing great. I'm so excited to talk to you about everything.
Well, I'm excited to have you, and you already told me before we hit record that you were in guesting mode today, so I'm glad to have you warmed up by maybe one or two other hosts here, and hopefully you're not too worn out just yet, and we can get a very good episode out of you, as I'm sure we can.
Yeah, no, I saved the best for last. The other ones were just, they were the opening act. This is the real show.
Oh, I like that. Kind of like a concert or a comedy show, which I am not either one. But so as I promised, we're going to go back in the Wayback Machine. And I can't remember exactly where your story of being overseas started out exactly, but I do see, obviously, words and writing and being creative in that way has always meant something to you. I see what your original major was of journalism. You majored in China and globalization later on, which I'm sure that had a lot to do with what got you to where you were to begin with. Were you always like one of those people that just loved to write in notebooks or dreamt of writing? How did you become passionate about writing and journalism?
So I feel like writing is just the way that I move through the world. And, people ask me that and they're like, have you always been a writer? I'm like, yeah, I didn't know there was anything else I could be. I didn't realize that everybody else wasn't until I started doing it. And yeah, I wrote books, books when I was a kindergartner. And words have just always fascinated me. So I went into journalism mostly because I was thinking just to find any kind of job where anybody would pay me to write, because that seems inconceivable to me because it's so fun and so easy for me. And I'm like, really? You want to just pay me to have fun all day? Okay, cool. Let's do that.
So I've always prided myself in being in touch with who I am. And when I was growing up, so I work in television, and that's kind of like my day job. That's something that I was obviously like really, really passionate about.
Yeah.
But I was also very passionate about writing. Everybody kept giving me good feedback on my writing and always told me what a good writer I was. So I thought a lot about having some kind of writing career, and I actually minored in journalism at one point. I wound up dropping the minor and changing it because mainly the teacher was grading everybody hard. Like, he was acting, almost playing that role of being like an editor, and was really kind of being like hard. You're shaking your head
I
like,
hate that. Like, I hate that you had that experience. So my original minor was in theater, actually. Funny enough, you were in TV. I wanted to do stage stuff. Guest here. Um, and I don't know if you saw me leaning over. I was trying to be like, no, 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 don't do it. I'm doing work. But I originally minored in theater, and I think we must have had the equivalent teacher, because that's why I stopped with the minor. I was like, no, this isn't fun. Like, this is anybody who can find a way to make dressing up and, doing theater work not fun. It just, what's the point?
yeah, no, I basically was hoping that journalism would actually really function as a real strong minor that I could build off of
Yeah.
coming out of college, because the minor that I chose, public administration, which was really more like political science. I studied a lot of things about law, and it
Yeah.
was really cool. I was really fascinated by it, but I can't say that I've done much with it. I've mainly just been like a TV person,
Yeah.
but even putting all that aside, I thought that I wanted to write, even with or without that experience, and especially with technology evolving and
Yeah.
giving opportunities like this to everybody. I know I tried starting a blog for a while, and I loved it. I had fun with it, but I definitely feel like I'm more in my wheelhouse doing an actual podcast, and there's a long story as to why all of that occurred, but I just find it interesting that I really just thought of myself as that, like that person of being a writer. And I actually learned that it is, even for somebody who considers themselves a decent writer and creative, it's a lot harder than you think. And that's whether you're being a creative writer or a journalistic writer, whatever it is. And I know that you do a lot of different stuff and a lot of really cool stuff. Even doing something business oriented, it's not easy to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the hardest part is that if you're a writer, just like with any other creative business, you have to be a writer and also a good business person, and that's the part nobody thinks about, right? And I mean, I would have never in my life thought that I would run a business. I never had any desire to. I didn't think I could. I was like, no, that's for math people. I'm not a math person. But that's the hard part with creative stuff is like, yeah, sure, you can be an amazing writer or photographer or actor or producer or whatever. But if you're not also good at business, it's probably going to go badly for you.
And kind of similarly to you, I thought that entrepreneurship was for people who were like just really wickedly smart at something, like the Steve Jobs, the Bill Gates of the world. And
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm definitely not that person. I'm the person who, much like I'm sure a lot of people around my age were taught, you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get the degree, you get a job, white picket fence, and you live happily ever after. But whoever invented that school of thought did not meet the 21st century because it is not that way.
Yeah. I mean, from what I've understand, a lot of us had an extremely rude awakening after going to college. And then, I expected the world to sort of like shake my hand and be like, good job, kid, you did the work. Here's your job. And of course, no.
Well, speaking of doing the work, you have a really interesting story. You, at least from what I can tell from your story, and obviously it's your story, so I'll let you tell it, but it looks to me like you kind of figured out some things about entrepreneurship long before I did. I wasn't even thinking about entrepreneurship 20 years ago. You have a story of being in Hong Kong where it was life-changing.
Yeah. So you had mentioned earlier you're not sure where the whole writing thing started for me. So I guess maybe I can pick up there. I went to school for journalism, like you said, did everything right, got the straight A's, interned at NPR, was like ready and willing to do this. And then 2008 happened as soon as I graduated. And nobody was hiring journalists, but they were especially not hiring journalists in rural Tennessee, which is where I was living. And so I sent out 200 resumes and I got 0 responses. And the only job I could get was unpacking boxes on the 5 a.m. shift at the Old Navy warehouse. And I was like, okay. And it was, me and a bunch of other humanities grads who were like, so glad that we did this. But I stuck that out for 6 months. And then I was like, okay, this is not what I want to do. So I thought, what is the furthest I can get away from Tennessee? And the answer was Hong Kong, because that's the other side of the world. And so I packed up and I moved to Hong Kong. I did not get a work visa because I was 22 and did not think about it. So I landed there with about $200 in my bank account and I had to make rent, but I can't actually apply for a job. And so I found myself Googling like how to make money online because it's 2008 and that's a little bit less stupid then than it is now. But I was so sure that I was, just going to get scammed. And I found this job for a content mill, which tells you how long ago this was. But it was some sort of like little freelance gig. And I'm like, who am I to turn up my nose at $3.25? So I took the job. And I was absolutely certain that they weren't going to pay me for it. I was just sure that I had spent a nice afternoon learning about airplanes, because that was what the piece was about. And I was like, okay, whatever, I did it, on to the next thing. And they paid me for it. And that money came into my PayPal. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe someone actually paid me for doing something fun like that, for writing. And so I was just completely hooked on it. And that's kind of my business origin story. Although it would be another 5 years or so before I actually admitted to myself that I was actually doing business.
And people like us should be commended because not only did we pick majors that are a bit unconventional, and I know you had a very unconventional path to where you got to today, but it takes a lot of passion for something like humanities or even something like majoring in television production
Oh yeah.
and to stick with it. You're shaking your head emphatically. What say
Yeah.
you?
I don't know that I've met anyone who's followed that kind of path who hasn't had an irrational love for what they do. Because if you don't have that, you don't keep doing this. There are much easier ways to make a living. And I love, the college I went to was actually really world renowned for audio engineering. It's in Nashville, Tennessee. And so I loved that I got to see the backside of all of that creative work. And I see these audio engineers, like poring over the sounds. And to see that level of passion or obsession, I think there's something so beautiful in that. And I didn't hang out with a bunch of business majors, so maybe it's the same way too. Maybe they're just really into profit and loss or whatever. But I think in the creative arts, especially, there's something there. You got to be a little crazy to stick with it that far.
Yeah, and I think so. I don't know if you have to be crazy to be an entrepreneur, but I do know that one common theme that I keep seeing with all entrepreneurs is passion.
Yeah.
And if you can have a real strong interest in wanting to like start a business or to work for yourself, whatever it is, but in order to really keep it going, to really see it be successful, you have to have a passion for it. And coming into this podcast, I knew that I had a passion for all things like media, technology, stuff like that. But I didn't truly know that I had a passion for doing all of this until I started doing it, because not only does this apply things that I've learned throughout my career for all those experiences I've had, but it also kind of shows me something about myself that I saw when I was in my early 20s, because I had like 50 billion jobs. I mean, just so I always kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I had somebody in my life, at least, I'll say at least one member of my family, won't, even though they're no longer with us, I won't call them out. I'll be a nice guy. But they were definitely pretty unsure of what I was doing. They were like, why don't you just get a business degree? Why don't you just do this and that? And it's like, well, first of all, I'm horrible with numbers and math. And yeah, Rachel,
Same.
Rachel agrees. She understands.
I feel your pain. I often make the joke that I dumped all my stats into words and I have nothing for numbers, because people are like, no, you're just being funny. And I'm like, no, I cannot do basic arithmetic. Numbers do not work for my brain.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. Totally relate. So it's just one of those things where it's like you have to do what you're passionate about. But if you're kind of like being discouraged by somebody really important in your life, it's like, okay, what do I do?
Yeah.
So I basically tried out like everything. I did a plumbing apprentice, I did apprenticeship, I did retail, I tried going to school for like a business degree, which was a total disaster. I tried so many things. I always kind of like call myself like the white collar dirty jobs at this point, because it's almost like that's what I'm doing now, and it taps into, because I even tried to become over-the-road truck driver, which
Oh.
would have been absolutely awful. And I'm
Mm,
so glad that I never sent in that application to train for that, because
yeah,
that would have been terrible.
it's
But
a tough gig. One of my best
yeah,
friends does that, and I'm just like, bless you. I could not ever do that.
my best friend's mom, back in the day when I was talking about it, she was like, I don't really know if I see you like doing that, Mark. And she was so nice about it. It
Yeah.
was basically a nice way of saying, what the hell are you thinking? Like,
No,
you know,
no.
don't do it. I'm so glad that I didn't. But I think where this all ties in is I think the same thought process as far as like how I do this show is similar to what I was doing back then, because I was trying out every single job and occupation. Like I worked in a woodworking factory. I did so many different things, and I wound up just circling back to the television production major and doing all that. But I feel like this combines a lot of different passions that I didn't even know I had this much passion until I started doing it. So to
Yeah.
bring all this back home, having passion is like very important if you want to really make a business work, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree because most businesses will fail. There are much easier ways to make money and to find stability. And while this is uniquely rewarding, I don't think it's the right fit for most people. Even if you do have that passion, you might have constraints in your life or obligations that you need to take care of right now that make it not a fit. But if it is, and if all the stars just happen to align the way they have for you and me, I mean, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. There's nothing I would rather do.
Well, now that we know a little bit about your backstory, how about you tell us a little bit about actually getting your business started and really taking off with this awesome idea of helping people to make words help them make money. Boy, that is so like that's such a good like phrase. I'm having a hard time even vocalizing it.
Oh, thank you. It took me like a solid 10 years to get there. So everybody thinks that was my first tagline. Oh, goodness. I don't know if you could hear. That was a very loud lightning strike behind me. Apologies.
Oh
Um,
boy.
but yeah, it took me about 10 years to come up with that. And it sounds awesome now. But the sort of story of how it took off is that I spent 5 years really trying to make sure it didn't. I was really sure that this was just some sort of like gap filling something. I was like, no, I'm taking a gap year. I'm not going to go do some sort of like crazy bohemian entrepreneur thing. I'm going to be a grown up and get a grown up job. And despite my very best efforts, I kept getting repeat clients. So I had started out with a content mill. I ended up sort of finishing all their assignments because I realized that the way to make survival money on that was to be really fast. So I got really fast. And then I had people reach out to me and ask me if they could hire me individually. And I said, sure, okay, I don't know, whatever. And I got about 5 years into it, and I was living the entrepreneurial dream. I was living on a Greek island and working in the mornings and sunbathing all afternoon, and strapping young Greek men are bringing me freshly pressed orange juice. And I was miserable. I was so unhappy. I was so anxious all the time because I was like, but this is not the plan. This is not how things are supposed to go. I'm not a business person. I can't do business. So I got a master's degree was my last ditch attempt at being like, no, I can get back on the path and like have a real job. And the year I did my master's degree was the year things really started exploding, and I started getting exponentially more clients and larger projects. And so by the end of that year, I got the degree, and my supervisor asked me to stay on and do a PhD with her. And I was like, you know what? I just don't think I can, because it's just not as interesting as doing my own business.
Yeah, so I can kind of relate to what you're saying here because I know this year especially everything is kind of like taking off a bit more for me. So I don't have any like anxiety necessarily, but I'm definitely in a frame of mind where like so I've been doing this show for about 5 years or so, and it's to the point where it's like now finally like I kind of like committed myself at the beginning
Yeah.
of the year to do something like I wanted to see a little more progress in what I was doing. So I kind of like took myself to task with it, and lo and behold, this is no longer just me going through and doing a lot of episodes and doing kind of like that work. I'm actually making real progress on a lot of things. So it's not causing me anxiety, but I can relate to like the growth of everything and how uh, that affects you because it's like a big change in your routine, and it's really great because you wind up, obviously, to your point, you wound up with a lot of, as I'm trying to fight off cats here. Uh,
It's that kind of day.
and not only that, I had my next guest pop up in here in the video. I I don't know if you actually caught that,
Yeah,
but
I saw him. I was like, cool, more people in the conversation.
yeah, I'm gonna be talking to Tom in another hour here. He kind of like popped in a little early. I think he lives across the pond, so
Oh, gotcha.
maybe his time got kind of mixed up.
Yeah.
But I hope so. Otherwise, we'll have to reschedule. But oh my goodness. But anyway, yeah, I really can relate to just like, wow, okay, I'm these are like all new things. This is
Yeah.
not just me doing what I do and what I'm passionate about. This is like all new territory. So how
Yeah.
did you wind up dealing with all that and kind of getting yourself balanced?
So I tried to ignore it for like 2 years after that. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do a business, but I'm not going to like care about it. And that won't be my real thing. And I did a lot of therapy because this was tied into a lot of, beliefs I had about myself, a lot of like childhood stuff, because of course, you hit your mid 20s, all that stuff starts coming up. And something that I tell people all the time is that like business is the most profound personal development journey that nobody realizes they're starting before they're in it. And I mean, for me, that was absolutely the case. I got into this and realized that a lot of the things, like if I wanted to make this a success and if I wanted to feel good about it, the core factor that had to change and grow was me. So I did a lot of work to get more comfortable with myself, with my values, with knowing what I actually wanted out of life. Because, at this point, I'm like, what, 24? And so I don't know, anything. And it just took a lot of time to kind of get my feet under me. And I think as I grew kind of more as a person, and sort of fell in love with the challenge of business, I was able to reframe it from like, I'm building a business, which of course I so-called couldn't do, right? Even though at this point I was earning, the money in my household. But I reframed it from building a business to like, what do I think I could do next? What's possible for me here? What sounds fun? And then it got really interesting.
In what way did it get interesting? Because I know that you obviously started as a copywriter and you
Mm-hmm.
help people with their words, but I know that marketing came into play. When did it really start to register that you could like merge the two and be I hate saying more than a copywriter because, like
Mm-hmm.
I said, being a copywriter is not easy. I don't
Yeah.
think that I even, as being a decent writer, I don't think I could do it. But I guess the most appropriate way would be when did you figure out you could merge the two and grow and make it kind of like a cohesive thing?
Uh, It's a great question. I think while I would not have categorized myself that way when this happened, I think when it happened was I got my first client that did not come from a content mill, and I just got incredibly lucky, incredibly fortunate. I was introduced to one of the larger entrepreneurial names in London, and I got on the call with her, and I didn't really know what I was doing on a sales call. And she's asking me all these things like, "Oh, can you do a nurture campaign?" And I'm Googling like, "What is a nurture campaign?" Yeah, sure, totally. And I ended up signing her for a 5-figure contract. And once I got into that, I had thought of it only as a copywriting gig, but she had hired me to support with a launch and a book launch. And I started seeing how all the pieces fit together and coming up with ideas. And I was like, hey, I know that you only hired me to write emails, but have you thought about what would happen if we did this at your events? Or have you thought about how your events play into your social media messaging? And she didn't have a marketing strategist at the time. She had been doing that all herself, and she was brilliant at it. But to have someone who could work as that external brain and be like, yeah, actually, let's talk about how these pieces can fit together. I think that's what really gave me my confidence and my chops with it, because I didn't realize other people don't see that, but I can't help but see the bigger picture. It just happens in my brain.
Yeah, and I could just relate to your path here. I am seeing this more and more on my end this year because I've basically been a podcast host for the past few years. Obviously, I'm doing all the production and stuff too, but I had my first speaking gig this year.
Nice.
And I also have started talking to potential, I don't even know if I want to call them clients because I consider them friends, but I've had a few people inquire about starting up a podcast.
Yeah.
And these are all things that I may have kicked it around a little bit, but it's like it's so far off in the distance. Like I'm just trying to keep putting episodes out and trying to keep myself going,
Yeah.
But as I continue to meet people and grow, the wheels start to spin and you start to think of ways that you can grow and the way that you can impact people more. And it kind of sounds like that's exactly what happened to you.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to put it. And what I really pulled out of what you were saying is you approach the work like the work is the work, right? You're going to keep doing the podcast interviews no matter what. Same with the writing. Like I'm going to write because that's just I can't not. My hands won't not do it. But I think there's this element of like curiosity and inquiry that you bring to this. And it was the same for me of just like, okay, like I've solved the writing puzzle. I know how to do that now. Now, what else can I find about this that's interesting, or how else can I help?
Well, how are you helping? Like, what kind of marketing trends are you seeing? What kind of like mistakes do you see in people's marketing? What are you seeing that you're helping people with?
So a lot of the work that I do these days is marketing strategy and fractional CMO work. And people typically bring me in a lot of times like founder-led businesses, maybe people transitioning from, say, big law or one of the big four, and they're starting their own practice and they need somebody who can really keep up with them. And they just want to like throw all their ideas at me and be like, make it marketing. So I do a lot of that, and that is one of the trends I'm seeing as the W-2 job market shifts. We do have a lot more people in a lot higher positions deciding to give up on it and come into entrepreneurship and do their own side hustle or do a business, usually a consulting firm or a practice. This correlates with people who are coming into the entrepreneur market for the first time, and it makes for this really fascinating mix because nobody especially knows what they should be looking for or doing because, of course, why would they? They've never done it before. And I'm fascinated by the way that the online world is responding because I see people telling me two things all the time. And one is, nobody has any money, they're not buying anything, this is the worst you have ever had in business. Or, oh my gosh, I can't believe how things are going. I'm making so much, my clients are paying so much more. I'm doing higher ticket offers. And so I'm like, okay, What is that? And the main factor is the novelty, right? They're just speaking to different audiences, but both of them are actually sort of in the same point in their entrepreneurial journey. One just has more money and more experience doing business in general. So that's one of the main trends I'm seeing.
And I'm sure with entrepreneurs that especially they're new and we've all been there. You have to start somewhere. And there's some of us who, and I'm not saying I'm one of us, but there's some of us who can like jump in and get ourselves going, at least in a pretty basic form without a lot of intervention. But we all have something that we're not good at. Like I
Yeah.
know even as somebody who has a real good media background, we're using computers since at least 1990 and have grown with them through a lot of phases. So it's not like I don't feel confident making like my own artwork or whatever. It's just probably not as good as somebody else might do.
Yeah.
And especially with things like SEO, I know
Yeah.
that's another area of development for me. So we all have areas that we need to reach out and get help with. And do you ever have people that are just really down? Like, I can't believe that I have to like get help, or is everybody usually just like, this is just a natural step in the process?
I don't know that I've ever had anybody be really upset about reaching out for support. I know I've had people who have been upset that they haven't been able to figure it out themselves. And that's really hard, especially for people who have been very successful in some other sphere, to be like, look, I know I should be able to figure this out, but I just can't and I don't know why. Especially because marketing, it seems a little fluffier. It's a little creative. It's like, why can't I figure out this stupid thing? Why won't the internet love me? So there is some emotional management to do there. But I think most of the time, by the time people get to me, they've either, frankly, been let down by a couple other people and they're like, please, can you help clean up this mess? Or they're experienced enough, perhaps as a C-suite exec or someone like that, or they've run another business or worked with a founder to be like, nope, I know when to raise my hand and call somebody else in. Just like I would do for literally anything with numbers. You don't want me touching my books. That's how tax fraud happens.
And leave it to the person who's so good with words to vocalize what I was trying to say is basically you can't figure it out yourself.
Yeah.
And there are some things that I know that I just am waving the white flag like I really can't figure it out on my own.
Yeah.
And have needed to kind of like branch out or inquire about, other ways that I can get to where I want to go. Because I think if we're at least putting in the energy to go into entrepreneurship, I think that says a lot about us right there. Yeah. But we don't all have every single skill. And I know I don't.
Yeah, no, I am really good at what I do, and I am also thankfully good enough to know what I'm not good at. But I mean, one thing that I say a lot to people when they ask me, like, should I become an entrepreneur? And I ask them if they like solving problems, because that's really the job. I mean, entrepreneurship, I've said this like 1,000 times before, but entrepreneurship is where almost nothing is your fault, but almost everything is your problem. And that's the whole entire job. It's like, do you like solving problems in one way or another? Great, this is for you. If that sounds terrible, go do something else.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel, especially with like podcasting, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I do know that when people start a podcast, they often don't stick with it.
Yeah.
I'm probably more of a rarity than I am a commonality, because according to the stats, according to what I hear and read, many people go like start one up. Oh, this is a great idea. I can't wait to do this. And then after a while, they get bored with it or they
Mhm.
figure out that it's too much work. So if you're going to be an entrepreneur, no matter what it is, be prepared to work and just ask yourself the hard questions like, how much passion do I have? Can I do it? Can I keep up with this? Can I do all the things that I need to do to be successful? And if you're having a hard time with it, you probably should do something else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what we saw certainly after the last wave of people coming in, which was during the pandemic. There was this huge boost. And then about 3 years later, everybody hit that mark that we all hit in business where you're like, wait, this never gets easier. And I'm like, nope, it just gets different kinds of hard. And if you can square yourself with that, great. Like this is probably a wonderful gig for you. But if not, I think that there's nothing wrong with being like, actually, this is much harder than I wanted, and I would like some stability in my life.
Well, a couple of examples of a different kind of hard have just happened to me during this episode. Uh, I had a guest pop into our conversation a little early, so that was interesting. And I have a very restless cat running around. I saw you laugh as I cooked Stitch and move. I didn't know. I don't have enough room. I think I have to put the chair down to kind of like just put her down. She's so sweet. She means well. But yeah, these are the things that I didn't even foresee happening before we logged in. You just never know. And that's what entrepreneurship is all about. And I hope that I was at least pretty seamless with all of that.
Well, I mean, as you're saying that, that's what I was thinking. I was like, that's how you know the true entrepreneur, because they're like, cat, okay. It's like whatever happens, you just have to cultivate this like, okay, this is what we're doing now type of moment. And that's not to say that you can't be afraid or you can't have moments of doubt or moments of overwhelm, but you have to, I think, develop a tolerance for risk and a tolerance for chaos to where when the guest pops on, when the cat climbs up on the desk, when whatever happens, you're like, all right, I'll figure this out too.
Well, speaking of figuring things out, I don't actually know if this is a good segue, but before we run out of time here, I want to touch on some of the things on the questions Rachel is always ready to answer here, because there are some good questions. I'm actually trying to pick out of these a little bit, but I am like very curious to learn just from your perspective. Like, I know getting people to engage in your content is, to me, that's like a huge challenge. Sometimes you nail it and you don't even really know how or why.
Yeah.
Sometimes you will put content out and you'll be like, well, I need to post something, but I don't feel like anybody's going to engage. And then you get a lot of engagement. And sometimes you feel really good about something and nobody is that interested. So I'd be really interested in knowing your perspective on that and how you help people.
Yeah. I think the first thing I'll say is I've seen your download numbers. You're totally nailing that. So I think that whatever you're doing is working. But I think you're absolutely right. You never know what people are going to respond to. A lot of it does come down to luck, but it also comes down to the relationship you've cultivated with your audience. And it's never what you think, right? I mean, the most popular thing I have ever done in my business is a workshop I put together as this little throwaway nothing about how to write a bio. And now I call it the internet's favorite bio workshop because people book it out every time I run it. I've taught it everywhere. And people love this thing. And I was like, really? this is what you've wanted the whole time, not, these carefully crafted things that I put together. Or even with my email list, it took me years to dial that in, because what I feel like I do now is sort of like empty my pockets and I'm like, hey, look at the lint in my pockets. Here's what I'm thinking about. And people love that. Whereas before I would be like, no, let me like really craft something that teaches you and like, let me give you my very best. And that's frankly, hubris on my part to be like, no, let me tell you what you need to know, as opposed to asking them like, hey, what do you want from me? Well, how can I serve? What can I give to you? And so I think if I had to give a very unpopular tip for how to get people to engage with your content, it's humility. You have to be humble enough to know that you're wrong and to know that you're not getting it, and to ask people and to listen to what the answer actually is, because it's probably not what you expect.
Absolutely. And you even mentioned a word and a topic, just one word, which is email. Is email marketing dead? Because we live in an era of social media and even like AI now, which I'd love your take on AI as well.
Yeah.
Not to avalanche you with a billion questions at
All
once,
right.
but yeah, that's I guess that's what we're doing. So,
Yeah.
what are your thoughts?
Email is not dead. People are not over email as a medium. People are over being treated badly in their emails, because how many bad emails do we get all the time? But as I am constantly showing people, with my work, with my clients' work, I still average 65% opens and about 25% click-throughs, which is well above industry average. So email marketing can actually be incredibly effective if you take the time to do it well, because almost everybody else does it super badly.
Oh, and you're leaving. That's a mic drop moment. I'm looking for more information. So
Yeah.
I kind of sort of tried email marketing. I don't even know if I want to say I tried. Like, I think I tried dabbling with it a little bit. When I had a blog, I tried adding like MailChimp,
Oh.
and yeah, I probably had no idea what I was doing with any of that. And I'm kind of glad that I wound up not really going forward with that. Obviously, because I'm not doing the blog anymore. But I kind of kicked around whether I should do email marketing or whether I should do like any kind of email thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I have not been able to determine if, like, I barely even have the time,
Yeah.
honestly. So,
No, completely. I completely understand. The reason that I do recommend everybody do at least some kind of email something is because that's the only list you own. Any sort of followership you build on any of the other platforms can be taken away from you arbitrarily at any time. And I've known people that it happened to, people with tens of thousands of followers overnight, they're just gone. So if you can find some way to convert those people over into something, email's usually the easiest. Some people I've seen have great success with, memberships, signal loops, anything where you can get people to be like, no, I really want to hear from you specifically, even if the internet says I'm not allowed to. That's why I recommend it. But I think it does, it's an investment of time. Depending on how you go about it, it can be an investment of money. But mostly it's an investment in a relationship, and that's heavy. And I understand why a lot of people don't want to do it, because, like, I already have friends and I'm tired most of the time.
yeah, no, I can totally relate to that. So, it looks like, so, one thing I should ask, because I was gonna kind of ask you about what is next, but what is the difference between what you're doing with Bolt from the Blue and Brandsmith? Is Brandsmith just kind of like that next step as far as adding marketing to the mix? Is there another step after this? Is there something else that you want to add to your repertoire?
I'm really happy with where I'm at and what I'm doing. So Bolt has always been, that's been my, my forever business, the one that I've done forever and the one that I will probably do until I die in some form. I do write, personal stuff as well. So I have a memoir that's coming out. I have a couple of other things that I do just as personal writing projects. And then I do say that I'm a brand smith at Triple Diamond, which is like, how, singers can form a super group. So you'll have like celebrities and they do a super group band. So that's my super group band with an amazing brand strategist named Solveig Petch. And we do brand strategy and brand development together there as kind of our fun side gig.
Well, I am really glad that you took a little bit of time out to hang out on what I guess is still my side gig because I do have like an actual full-time job with actual, not that I'm not an actual thing, but with a much larger company. But I had a blast talking to you about all of this today. Amazing story, and I love the evolution of your brand and just what you do. Um, do you care to share how people can get hold of you, how they can work with you, and anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is just thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun, and thank you to everyone for listening. You can find me very easily on the internet. My website is Bolt from the Blue Copywriting. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Rachel Allen. That's RachelAllen. There's a Bolt from the Blue Substack and Instagram if you just happen to want a whole lot more of that. Or you can just send me an email at hello@boltfromthebluecopywriting.com and I will email you back.
Awesome. That is perfect. Well, I thank you so much, Rachel, for being on Mark My Words today. This was an awesome conversation. Loved your energy, and I wish you continued success and hopefully deflection of AI or maybe even,
Yeah,
collaborating with AI, maybe? Do you see
yeah.
that as a possibility?
I'm so glad you brought that back up because I was like, wait, I forgot to answer that one. So my take on AI briefly, because I know we're at the end. I'm absolutely unafraid of it. I actually was involved with several AI companies kind of right before LLMs became very popular and ChatGPT became everybody's everything. So I feel very fortunate for that in that they were these very techie companies and they had me do a lot of research into like, no, you need to understand how this actually works. So I'm like, okay, that's the first thing. I wish people would understand how it actually works and what it can do and what it can't do. So I think it's a brilliant tool. I think it's incredibly useful. And I think it is hyped up to the point of absolute nonsense. And so I think having a clear understanding that let's say if we're using a metaphor like it's a car and not a spaceship, or it's a spaceship but not a planet, you need to just understand what it actually is. So I do have clients who specifically request that I use AI in the work I do for them, and I'm happy to do that. The way that I use it is I treat it like a marketing intern because that's about the level of work that it can provide for me. And I'm like, I've managed interns for years. I will happily add your robot intern into my fold and work with them that way.
Well, much like many other guests I've had on this show, I'm really glad that you have shed such a positive light on AI. And there are negative points to AI as well, but I think it's really important to get professionals like you to speak out to say, hey, AI is not something to fear. And I, for one, I'm kind of like dabbling in it a little bit. I'm doing a lot of silly stuff on ChatGPT. Like, I'm basically to kind of like get me learning and to get me going using it. I started just saying, create an alternate universe where this these movie characters met these TV characters and what would happen and just stuff like that. And it's helped me because I've started thinking about it in terms of like Mark My Words and some of
Yeah.
the things that I wanted to do, or excuse me, I recently didn't have enough time to create like some music for a sponsor that
Mm,
I have for this show. And it wound up, in my opinion, being a better move to not use the music at all or any music. But
yeah,
I asked ChatGPT to create some music for it. And it was, first of all, it was amazing. So at least now I know it can do that. It can
yeah,
produce something for you. Unfortunately, the something it produced was really bad. So I could not use it. But I think it's great that between me and you and other guests that we're at least kind of opening up that conversation because I want to
absolutely.
open up people's eyes much like my eyes have been open. And I have to imagine that with you being a copywriter, which is why I kind of held on to that topic of AI there, wrapping
Yeah.
up, because I know that's got to be impacting you and very important to you and what you do.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad you did because people do ask me about that all the time. And when it first became popular, there was that kind of like smug, like, oh, you're going to lose your job. And I'm like, please, like AI wishes it could do what I do. But I will say, like any technological advancement, it's a filter. And so I think that for people who are just kind of okay at this, I think they probably will lose work because AI is kind of okay at it as well. But for the people who bring the humanity and importantly, I think the craftsmanship to this work, you just can't replace that. And so I'm not even a little bit worried about it.
Fair enough. Well, I am not worried about the fact that we didn't cover that topic. Trying to figure out a clever way to say that. Rachel Allen, thank you so much for being on Mark My Words today. I'm your host, Mark Schmidt. I don't even think I mentioned that, but thank you again for being here on Mark My Words. Thank you for listening to Mark My Words, and I'll see you soon with a new episode. Bye for now. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to go on a journey with me into entrepreneurship and life on Mark My Words. If you would like to learn more about me and the show, you can find me on LinkedIn at Mark Schmidt or connect with me on Instagram at Nimrod79. Video episodes of Mark My Words, as well as other content, can also be found on the Mark My Words YouTube page. Entrepreneurship can be quite the roller coaster ride. It can be a bit isolating and intimidating, but it doesn't have to be that way. Let's meet here next time at the crossroads on another episode of Mark My Words.